You know what that means? The word green will appear in the responses. We start with
You're the one in jeopardy.
third place at the moment, and that is you.
What's in here? The answers for tomorrow's show?
No, the questions.
Of course.
Watch Jeopardy weeknights at 7:30 here on Channel 7. Channel 7, Buffalo.
Kotzen, director of the Subliminal Research Foundation.
We put subliminals down essentially from 1958 till 1987. And suddenly in 1987, the time is right, the technology right, the benefits are there, people have experience, they are doing well with the use of this process, and I don't see any end in it. I simply see more benefits deriving from greater technological skills, greater scientific breakthroughs in the brain area, and all of these things lend themselves beautifully to subliminal processing.
Dr. Jerry Moore, a clinical therapist from Los Angeles, California.
Well, we have to differentiate, I feel strongly about this, between the Joe Land technique and what he's able to give to the public and all the others, because I haven't seen that much accomplished with the other tapes.
Dr. Robin Tyre has lectured extensively on the powers of the subconscious.
We have a belief structure within us that is set from the time we were born. And this belief structure is not always the belief structure that is best for us. And subliminal reprogramming gives you the opportunity to put into your subconscious mind the information that you want in there to live your life in a positive, dynamic manner.
These people are talking about a new and exciting technological breakthrough in self-improvement. In this special program, you'll learn about the advances science has made in subliminal or subconscious level reprogramming. If you've ever wondered why you've not been able to become as happy or as successful as you'd like to be, there may be a reason. In the next hour, you'll gain valuable insights into that reason and an exciting scientific discovery that may well provide the solution. This is Joe Land. As a self-made multimillionaire, he was one of the most popular and respected lecturers in the nation on financial success. He says he stopped conducting his seminars because most of his students could not overcome their fears, lack of confidence, and the other mental barriers that kept them from using his financial formulas to become successful. He began then looking for a way to solve the real problems that keep people from attaining their goals. Problems he knew came from within. It was during that period of exploration that he became familiar with a new way, an almost effortless way, to remove the self-imposed restrictions that limit all of us. The Joe Land Company, in cooperation with the Subliminal Research Foundation, presents Program Yourself for Success.
We're discovering that we have this tremendous capacity for growth when we stop and think for a minute about the following thing. In the history of the universe, there have been scientists. 85% of all the scientists that have ever lived are alive today and operating and working effectively, attempting to discover more of who we are, what we can become.
The founder and chief executive officer of the Joe Land Company, Mr. Joe Land.
Y'all doing all right tonight? I'm going to tell you something. I got a wild tale for you. You want to get ready. I don't know whether you're going to need a pen and pencil or not, but just get ready, because I've got something to tell you that I'm more excited about than anything I've ever done. Let me tell you what happens to people who try to become financially successful. People go to real estate seminars and they spend 2 days. They go home. They don't need a car to ride home. And those folks are convinced that for the first time, the reality of them living in the posh end of town, having the things they'd really like to have, having the last frontier freedom, the financial freedom, the freedom to have the money to do whatever it is you want to do, can be theirs. And so they call that first for sale by owner the next morning and make an appointment to look at that first property. And I'll tell you, those of you who've been to those courses can relate to what I'm talking about. You make that appointment, and then after work, when it comes time to go over and see that property, they get in their car, and on the way over there, the biggest enemy that ever faces them in their real estate investing career rears its ugly head and stops 90% of them dead in their tracks. You know what it is? Let me tell you what it's not. It's not anything big enough that it ought to stop them. I mean, the highway patrol does not pull them over and say, okay, get your hands on the hood. We think you're trying to buy real estate. That doesn't happen. It's a little bitty, teeny, tiny voice. It says, you ain't no real estate investor. Who you trying to kid? You're the same guy you were last Friday, except that you're $400 poorer because you gave that $400 to that real estate outfit. And you know, the problem is not that everybody hears the voice, because everybody really does. The problem is most of them respond to it. 90% of them respond to it by saying, and I thought I was a real estate investor. See, here's the problem. In order to become a real estate investor, you got to go act like a real estate investor. You got to do the things that a real estate investor does. But people somehow can't rake up the courage to act like a real estate investor if they're not one. And so they can't become one until they act like one. They can't act like one until they become one. It's catch-22. And there isn't any way they're going to get out of it. You see, they got to understand, people have to understand the problem is here. Why do some people win and some people lose? Why do some people make good decisions? Why do some people make bad decisions? Why are people able to overcome their problems sometimes and other people not? Everybody here knows at least of a millionaire that went broke and became a millionaire, went broke and became a millionaire 4, 5, 6 times in their life. Took him 25 years the first time, took him 2 years the second time. But how come they can do it several times? It's because you can take, if you take a millionaire, you take somebody who's been successful financially, you can rob him and take everything that he's got away from him except his most precious commodity, and that is his millionaire mind. He believes himself worthy to be a millionaire. He thinks himself capable. And you know, most people don't really think they're worthy. And when you visualize that there's 2% that are haves, that have the things they want, just 2 little bitty teeny tiny percent, and another 98% of the have-nots, come on now. Which group do you really feel like you belong in? And are you really going to strive to get into a group that you don't even feel like you're worthy to be in? I was doing a seminar in Salt Lake City, and there was a psychiatrist there, one of the neatest fellows I'd ever met. We were talking during the break. This is probably one of the neatest days in my life when I look back on it, because in that very same seminar in Salt Lake City, a lady came up to me, and she said, Joe, she said, have you ever heard of subliminal mind programming? And I said, well, no, ma'am, I can't say I ever have. And she said, well, she said, I represent a company that makes a cassette tape. And she said, this cassette tape, when you play it on a machine like any other cassette, and she said, all you hear are ocean waves. You hear waves, and an occasional seagull fly by, and a cricket every now and then, and that's about all you hear. She said, at least that's all your conscious mind hears. But she said, your subconscious mind hears some voices that are embedded down in those waves. And she said the subconscious not only hears those voices, but it understands them and gets reprogrammed as a result of it. I said, sure. Yeah, I'm real positive that happened. And she said, well, here's some literature. You know, it's got my phone number. Read this, and if you're interested, give me a call. And so, you know, I've been to a lot of seminars, and I've had a lot of people give me a lot of things. And I can tell you that I would have thrown that piece of paper away had it not been for about the time she turned and left. I looked over and saw my psychiatrist friend. Now, it's kind of nice to have a professional there that you can check out these things. So I went over there to find out what the deal was. I went up and I said, have you ever heard of subliminal mind programming? And he said, sure. And I said, well, is it valid? He said, oh, yeah, it's scientific, it's fact. And I said, really, tell me about it. Well, I had an artist draw the picture that he described to me, because I found that people can understand it a whole lot better. If we can put that thing up, let me show you how that psychiatrist told me he explains the human mind to his patients. There it is. Can you see that? He said, I want you to picture your subconscious mind as a great big room. That's your resource room. That's your storage room. That's your data room. That's where everything you've ever heard, seen, heard, or tasted, felt, smelt, said, did is in that room. It's a huge recording device. Now, he said, I want you to picture your conscious mind as the guard standing at the door of that room. He said, now the guard is in charge, and he makes all the decisions. He decides what to do. He's the one that puts the personality forth. He does all the talking. But he said, that guard operates because of and in relation to and as a result of the data in that room. Now, Think about this for a minute. Imagine your mind that way. The conscious mind, the part of you that you're aware of. And let me talk just a minute about the conscious mind as opposed to the subconscious in the terms we understand it. Subconscious means unconscious or not aware. You are not aware of what's happening in 88% of your mind. The only part of your mind that you are aware of is the 12% that's the conscious mind. That part that you are aware of, that's where you live. And it can only deal with one issue at a time. Your conscious mind is really pretty feeble compared to the rest of your mind. But they tell us that the subconscious mind can perceive, store, and retain up to 100 million bits of information a second. Now, folks, that's moving pretty fast in deciphering and storing a whole lot of things, stimulus coming in from your five senses. See, your conscious mind can only do one thing at a time, and it's control. See, you think you're in control, but you're not. Your conscious mind is being controlled by your subconscious mind, because the things that are in your room, the things that are in your subconscious mind, your programming, if you will, dictate how you act. When you were born, that whole process, the room and the guard, was just squeaky clean. Nothing in there. And your parents were the first thing, or the first ones in charge of putting something in there. And guess what your parents' favorite word for you was in the first 10 years or so of your life? What would you think? No. No. Is no a negative word? Folks, no is the epitome of a negative word. For some reason, parents feel obligated to spend the first 10 or 12 years of their children's lives telling them no and telling them what they can't do. You can't do this, and you can't do that, and you better not do this, and if you do that again, you're going to be in trouble, and if you keep on doing that, you're going to end up in jail or dead. You remember all that? They told us over and over and over what we can't do. In fact, they tell us that surveys and studies reveal that the average parent, for every one positive thing they say to their children, they say 25 negative things. Now, folks, I want you, excuse me, just to imagine that we got all these negative things coming in the door here. 25 to 1 negative, no, things you can't do. And all of that stuff goes in there and starts to pile up. And remember, that's your resource room. That's your data room. You're getting programmed with all that stuff. And frankly, all that garbage that we get in our room begins to stink. And the stench comes back out that door, and guess what it does? It begins to affect your guard. Because remember, that's your resource room. That's where he gets his attitude from. It's where he gets his feelings from. It's where he gets his opinions from. And then he gets into the process. Then you begin to help the process, because reacting now negatively because of the negative programming and the negative feedback you get from that part of your brain that really controls you, you start to say negative things. And we say things like, oh gosh, I never have been able to do that. Oh, I've never had the patience to do that. Well, just haven't never had the talent to do that. And then, for God's sake, some of us start talking about being unlucky. Well, with my luck, this thing will fall down just the minute I walk in there, you know. And see, you heard a computer programmer say garbage in, garbage out. You ever heard that? Works exactly the same way with a human mind. And it also works backwards from that, too. Garbage out, garbage back in, because the stink from all the negative garbage piled up in our room comes and affects the guard. Then he begins to talk and act and think negatively, and that stuff goes right back in the room, and it all piles up, and it's a wonder we do anything positively. See, when people come to financial courses, when people come to seminars to learn how to make a bunch of money, they come in an attempt to learn how to change their behavior. But folks standing up in front of a crowd and telling them what they have to do is a long way from enabling them to go do it. I mean, if you're going to start doing something you've never done before and stop doing a bunch of things you've always done before, it's going to take more than some instructor standing up there telling you what it is he did. Of course, what he did was successful, but can you go do it? Can you find the courage, the creativity, the enthusiasm? Can you find the self-image to go out and do those things? Most people can't, and that's why most people fail. Folks, it's here. Here's the key. Stop looking outside. You can't change your behavior until you change your attitude. But you see, you can't change your attitude until you change your feelings. You can't change your feelings until you change your beliefs. And you can't change your beliefs until you change the things that are in your subconscious mind. Folks, listen to me. This is where it is. Abundance comes from an abundant state of mind. And you're not ever going to be wealthy out here until you're wealthy in here. This psychiatrist said, Joe, he said, we could solve the problem of all the negative programming in the room. And I'm going to tell you something. You don't even know who you are. You don't have any idea who you'd be if the things that happened to you hadn't happened to you. because you still react to those things because they're programming. They're in that room. You don't know about them because that's a subconscious, unconscious room, but they control you. He said, Joe, you got a low self-image. And I said, how do you know I got a low self-image? You just met me. He said, because everybody has a low self-image. You know, when you think about what a magnificent creature you are, I'll promise you, you have a low self-image of yourself in comparison to what you really are. And let me tell you how I know. I've had enough of the darkness of my view of myself lift off me that I can see enough light that I can tell you, folks, it's a glorious life if you can just feel good about yourself. And most of us have felt bad about ourselves so long, and it's been such a gradual process that we're not even aware of our low self-image. And he said, Joe, you got a low self-image. You don't think as much of yourself as you should. He said, I could set you down, Joe. He said, now, we'll never get rid of the negative things that are in your room. They're there forever. It's a storage device, and they'll always be there. But he said, we can cover it up with positive things. We can pile more positive things in there than you have negative, and you'll start to feel good about yourself. And then the breeze that comes out the front door that affects your guard and how he acts starts to smell good, and it starts to feel good, and he starts to feel good about himself, and he starts to feel capable and able. He said there's a couple of problems, though. He says the only way we can get anything into the room is by giving it to the guard. Here's what we do. He said, we just sit down, and over and over and over again, I tell you, Joe, you're good. Joe, you're as good as anybody else. Joe, if someone else did it, you can do it. You're unique. You're a human being. God made you, and God didn't make any junk. And he said, we can say all of that stuff we want to, but he said, I've got to say it literally millions and millions of times because you've got years and years and years worth and millions of negative suggestions in your mind that have taken their toll. And he said, you put a bunch of them in there, gobs of them, every time you think and talk negatively instead of positively. He said, well, we could do that. He said, one of us is going to get tired after 6 or 8 months of me telling you how good you are over and over and over the same sentences, so we pile up those affirmations. But he said, that's not our biggest problem. He said, our biggest problem is that we got to give that message to the guard at the door so that he can take it in the room. And here we go. We say to the guard, Joe, you're good. You're as good as anybody, Joe. You can do it. And we say, okay, guard, take the message in the room. And so he takes the message. But you see, the guard's attitude is affected by the programming that's already in the room, and he's on their side. Did you know that? I mean, his reference point is negative. He feels bad about himself, and so he takes the message, Joe, you're good, and he takes it into the room, and he says, we're trying to make you believe this, but it ain't true, and he puts it down. Now, how much good's that going to do? Remember the movie 2001? Remember the computer? For those of you who didn't see that movie, there was a computer out in outer space, and he was in charge of everything, the life support systems, and they named him Hal. This computer had a personality. He bought foreclosures in his spare time. No, I'm just teasing. That's not right. But this computer had some bad programming, and old Hal began to shut things off and kill people, and they couldn't get him to stop. And they needed to reprogram Hal. They needed to take out that bad programming, and they needed to put in some good programming. But they couldn't because Hal wouldn't let them, because Hal suffered from his bad programming. And part of the programming process was to teach him that that's who he was and that's who he should be and that was normal for him. And he resists change. He wouldn't let you change him because we don't like people changing our program. And so we tend to be what we think we are when in fact we are just reacting to garbage that's in our room. And so they were faced with a problem of trying to find a way to get into Hal's data banks and change his programming without him knowing it. And folks, that's exactly what has to happen in your subconscious mind. Your guard is going to taint, is going to stop, is going to almost void any attempt to put new programming in your subconscious because he's affected by that programming. And so, subliminal. Subliminal means perceptible or perceivable to the subconscious mind, but not perceptible to the conscious mind. We got our first view of subliminal in 1957. It was in a little movie theater in New Jersey. The movie was Picnic, and it starred Kim Novak. Remember that? Yeah, I thought so. There were some advertising people. You might know they'd be capitalists looking for a buck that would discover this thing and bring it out in the open. But here's what happened. In the film, that they ran that movie on that night, they put in every few frames. Now, I used to think it was a picture of popcorn, but it wasn't. It was the words, "Eat popcorn and drink Coca-Cola." It came on for 1/1000th of a second. Much too quick for you to see. Nobody saw it. And at least they didn't think they saw it, but somebody in there saw it, because the popcorn sales went up 58% that night, and the Coca-Cola sales went up 18%. See, your subconscious mind is so much more active and capable and powerful than your conscious mind. All your conscious mind does, remember, it can only deal with one little issue at a time. It takes the skim off the top. It takes just the top, the obvious, from what's being fed into it by its five senses. And 1/1000th of a second was just not enough time for the conscious mind to pick it up. But it went into the eye. The eye works all the time. Even things that only are there for 1/1000th of a second go into the eye, into the optic nerve, and their subconscious mind was perfectly capable of seeing it and reacting to it. And that's how come the popcorn sales went up that night. Let me tell you how the nation responded to that. Almost violently. We didn't like the idea that someone could control us. See, that's much more effective than an advertisement. Think about that. If they'd have just put a sign up that said, "Eat popcorn and drink Coca-Cola," do you think that had anywhere near those results? Of course not. Subliminal is much more powerful than something that's perceivable to your conscious mind, and people didn't like that. Now we have backmasking and rock records with satanic messages and drug-related messages, and don't think for a minute that those are not real, because they are. But you see, the fact that subliminal's been in the wrong hands all these years doesn't eliminate the fact that it's the most powerful mind-changing tool we've ever seen. And just like fire destroys if it's misused, it was one of the biggest boosts our civilization ever had when we harnessed it and found a way to use it correctly. And subliminal is a way to get into the back door, folks, of your room and change things in there without the guard voiding them and tainting them as they go in. See, when you play those tapes, he said, all your conscious mind is aware of hearing are those ocean waves. And I said, now wait a minute. Either the voice is down underneath those waves or at a high enough volume so that you can hear them, or you can't. Now, one of your mind hearing them and the other mind not. And he said, Joe, he said, what you think is happening isn't anywhere near as what's happening. I said, what do you mean? He said, you think I'm talking? You folks tonight think that I'm making sounds, words. You think you're hearing them. That isn't what's happening. I'm vibrating my vocal cords. I'm vibrating the air around us. And you have a corresponding little membrane in your ear, and it vibrates. And somehow those vibrations go into your mind, and you perceive that as sound. You think you're hearing me, but you're not. I'm not talking. All I'm doing is wiggling the air, folks, and wiggling your ear. Not any sounds, not any hearing. And don't make any mistake, when those subliminal tapes play, your eardrum vibrates with every one of those vibrations that are being made by each of those sounds. And your conscious mind is not capable of digging down in there and understanding the voice. But buried in those waves, down inside that sound, at a volume that can't be detected by the conscious mind, there's a voice talking. And the subconscious mind hears that voice. And you see, now there's a way to open up a back door into that room, and unknown to the guard, he doesn't have a chance to mess it up. His stinky attitude as a result of the bad programming in there doesn't have a chance to void out the message. And so without him even knowing what's going on, with old Hal being oblivious to the fact that we're in there changing his programming, we got a back door open now, and we're pouring in thousands of positive, potent, powerful new programming. He told me about the subliminal concept, this psychiatrist, at this seminar I was at. And I feel strange saying this now, but I have to tell you that I didn't, at that point, see the connection between the problem that I talked to him about earlier, that my students couldn't find a way to go and put the techniques that I taught them into effect, and the subliminal concept. I know it makes perfect sense now, but it didn't then. And I would have thrown away that piece of paper even at that point. I mean, it was interesting, but I didn't, see any big flags wave when he said that. And I would have thrown that away, except that I looked down the list of programs and saw one entitled Gaining Confidence with the Opposite Sex. Now, let me tell you that story. At that point in my life, I'd been divorced, 6 or 8 months. Now, I've been married one time in my life for 17 years. I have 2 daughters, and then I got a divorce. And for those of you who haven't been through that, let me tell you what it's like. First, it's like cutting off your right arm. After 17 years, a bond grows between you and a person you're married to that's like severing a part of you. Then, after you go through that trauma, which was the toughest thing I ever went through in my life, you wake up in a brand new world every day. You're alone for the first time in a long time. Your friends are somehow different. They're all married, and you have to find a brand new way to cope with the world. I mean, everything is different. But I had a little bigger problem than that. And I understand my problem now as a result of going to a therapist. But I felt bad about myself, and I'm not going to tell you the whole story, but I, for lots of reasons, felt bad about myself when I was a little kid. I had the self-image of a cruddy little kid that wasn't as good as the other kids, and I began to shy away from them and be a rebel, and you know what little kids do when they feel like they're not liked, and because I was acting goofy and strange, well, they began to dislike me for real now, and now the problem compounds itself, and by the time I got to high school, I was a loner, absolute loner, felt terrible about myself. And I may as well go ahead and tell you that I really didn't find a way to fit into society at all. And I know this sounds strange, but one time I, just in an accident, was thrust and literally drug in front of a group of people and expected to say something to them. And I tried my best to respond to the situation. And I don't know how to describe this, but a personality came out of me in front of that crowd that I'd never felt before. And something happened, an electricity between me and that group of people. And for the first time, I remember seeing some acceptance and even some appreciation on the faces of other people. And I found a home in front of a crowd. So the only place I ever felt comfortable was in front of a crowd. I didn't feel comfortable one-on-one with anybody. I felt inferior. I felt intimidated by people one-on-one, especially if they were women. And I'll tell you why. And every man in this room can relate to this. When you're a cruddy little kid with a low self-image to begin with, when you're a cruddy little boy, little girls are better than you are. Do you know that? They're smarter, they make better grades, they write pretty, they smell good, they won't even touch frogs. You know, they're just different than little boys. They're just higher and better, and I was afraid of them. I got to tell you, I was scared to death of little girls. And folks, unless something changes the things in your room, you stay that way. And that little boy that was afraid of little girls grew up to be a 40-year-old successful man who was afraid of women. I got to tell you how bad it was, really, because I think people need to know that there are problems that we have that come from no logical reason at all that overpower us. I was in Hawaii. I was in a hotel. I was doing a seminar. This was about 3 or 4, maybe 5 months after I'd gotten divorced. And by an elevator, I saw one of the most beautiful women I've ever seen in my life. She was a picture, and she didn't have a wedding ring on. And so I thought I'll go up and say something to her. And folks, I'm going to tell you, I worked on it, and I worked on it, and I worked on it, and I just couldn't find the courage. And so I understand not being able to go execute a technique that somebody else feels easy. Because, folks, we got some problems in here that keep us from doing things we ought to be able to do, that we deserve to do, that we could do, that we're capable of doing if we just didn't have all of that junk back there keeping us back and holding us and keeping us from being limited. And so, it says gaining confidence for the opposite sex. I figure, what harm can it do me to listen to some waves? You know what I'm talking about? And so I ordered the tape. Well, when I get it, it's got some instructions with it. They said that I should listen to it at least 1 hour a day and that I should listen to it at least 21 days before I start looking for any results. I have never paid attention to instructions in my life. I figure if 1 hour a day would be good, 10 or 12 would be magnificent. And so here's what I did. I bought this little tape recorder here. I put this thing in my pocket. Now, this isn't the original cord. I've gone through 4 or 5 of these. This used to have 2 earphones on it. I cut one of them off so I could do business with the other ear, and I put this one here, and I'm playing waves. You know, I just thought of something. I'll bet you can hear the waves on this tape. Are you getting confident yet? Huh? So anyway, I put this thing in my ear. I'm listening 10, 12 hours a day to this thing. And after I get 50, 60, 70 hours in that tape, I begin to feel a difference inside. I began to gain a confidence that felt strange to me. There was a girl that worked in a restaurant that I used to go to real often in my hometown. And we got to talking one day, and see, she didn't know there was a difference. She just thought that she'd been wrong in her perception of what I used to be like. She said, Joe, gosh, well, you know, we were wrong about how you were. And I said, you've been talking about me? And she said, yeah. She said, now that it turns out we weren't right, I guess I can tell you. But she said, frankly, nobody in here liked you. And she said, you were a pretty generous tipper and what have you, but she said, you just acted like you were better than we were. You acted aloof. You just refused to even acknowledge us as human beings. I was scared to death of them. You know, I wonder how many of you give off a totally wrong impression and don't even know it. How many people don't like you, won't do business with you, say bad things about you because of a misconception of what you are, because of an attitude you give off, because of a problem you have in your subconscious mind, and as the years went by, you found a way to cope. See, my way to cope with women was to just avoid them, just to act better than they were. I didn't know I was doing that, but that's something to think about, because we do things we're not even aware we do, and they hold us back, and they affect people's attitude toward us. And I have to also tell you that problem, petty as it may sound, although it's not petty, it goes right to the core of anybody. Being able to relate to the opposite sex is important to any human being. But that problem had affected a lot of areas. In fact, it had touched virtually every part of my life. And week by week, as I listened to those tapes, I felt myself become a better person. I had more confidence in lots of areas. Well, by this point, it has dawned on me that this thing can solve the problems that people have in keeping them from doing the things that they need to be able to do in order to become financially successful. I mean, they're with a breakthrough. They're with, I think, one of the biggest assets mankind has ever had. And here's their story. You see, anybody can make a subliminal tape, and there are several companies that have the things on the market. All you have to do is go down to Radio Shack, we'll give them a plug, and buy a little piece of equipment for a couple of $100s that'll put something on a tape at a higher volume than something else. And so then you speak these positive affirmations: I'm good, I'm courageous, I'm creative, I'm enthusiastic, whatever it is you want to be. And then you just put some music or some waves or some rain or whatever a little louder than your conscious mind can hear, and play it to yourself. The problem is, probably about the best you could do is put 600 or 700, maybe 1,000 repeats of those affirmations or suggestions on a 1-hour tape. And folks, you'll play those things till doomsday, trying to put enough of those in there to overcome the years and years and years of negative suggestions that you have in your subconscious mind. So they began to work with multi-tracks, multi-tones, multi-frequencies in an effort to layer lots of voices on a tape. Then they got to where they could put between 80 and 110,000 affirmations on every tape they make. And folks, I'm going to tell you something. When you pour that kind of power into your mind, things begin to happen. See, the way to lose weight, and I may as well tell you this, I've had a weight problem all my life. I've weighed as much as 60 pounds more than I weigh right now. I've lost 23,000 pounds in my lifetime and gained it all back and gone up and down and up and down. But the way to lose weight is to change this thing. You need to change how you feel about food. You need to change your eating habits from way back here. See, if you tell your mind, I want to be a thin person, then your mind says, okay, let me know when we get to be thin, and I'll act like we are thin. See, your subconscious mind operates in the now, folks. The only way to become thin is to say, I'm thin. The only way to become wealthy is to say, I am wealthy. But see, your conscious mind doesn't believe you're wealthy, and so when you try to say that, it doesn't do any good. And so if you leave the conscious mind out and 100,000 times an hour you pour in there, I don't get particularly hungry. I prefer nutritional foods and small amounts of them. My bodily organs function properly. I'm a thin person who takes pride in their body. That's the way to lose weight, and it works, doesn't it, Tony? So I took the 12 characteristics that I feel a person has to have in order to be financially successful, and I put them into an album, and a 12-cassette album called Program Yourself for Success. And here are these 12 areas. The first one is self-confidence. Folks, self-confidence is your faith in your ability to do something. See, I've known for a long time that people wouldn't go use my no-money-down techniques because they were afraid. Fear, I thought was our biggest enemy. You folks just got to overcome your fear. But folks, fear is the symptom. Let me tell you what the disease is. The disease is they don't have any faith in their ability to go do it. And if you really genuinely think that there's a good chance you're going to mess it up and end up in worse shape than when you started, no wonder you're afraid to do it. In fact, you're a fool if you do it, if you really think that. But folks, you feeling like you're not capable of doing something that I've done or Tony's done or anybody else has done is just a result of the stench from the garbage in your room, because you're a human being, and if they did it, you can do it, and all you need is some reprogramming. What you need is 100,000 times an hour the message to go in: I am a capable, competent person. I can learn how to do something that anyone else did, and I'm capable of doing it, and if I don't do it the first time, I'll learn from that experience, and in the end, I'll overcome and I'll get it done. That's what you need to think, and that's got to come from the inside. The second thing you have to have is self-image. Now, that may sound like an overlap, but it's not. Self-confidence, I just told you, is your faith in your ability to do something. Your self-image is your picture of yourself. See, you may feel perfectly capable of doing something, but don't feel worthy to have the result of having done that. And we somehow think maybe it'd be taken away from us. We'd lose it if we did happen to get it. And so we half-heartedly make the effort or don't make it at all.
My self-image was very low, and that's what caused my just debilitating shyness and being so introverted and withdrawn. I had a hard time even speaking one-on-one with people. But the self-image tape was the absolute key, I think, to my being able to turn all that around and being able to relate to people, even my own children.
Success motivation is the third one that I chose. Folks, motivation means desire. You show me somebody 65 who's among that infamous group of 95% of Americans who can't support themselves at retirement time, and I'll show you somebody that just didn't want it bad enough to get up and go through the things necessary and do the things necessary to get it done. It's just about that simple. And you can't borrow somebody else's desire. Motivation, desire, has got to come from inside, folks. And that's where these tapes put it. It doesn't feel like it's coming from the outside. It comes from the inside, because once the programming gets changed back here where you're not aware, and that breeze starts to come out that door, it starts to feel good, and you just become a more powerful, more capable, more confident person. And the desire is there. See, what you need is something telling your subconscious mind, my desires are stronger than my fears. My desires for the things that I've set up as worthwhile goals are stronger than my feelings of inadequacy. They're stronger than my fear of rejection. And anytime there's a battle, then my desire for the things that I've set forth as my goals will emerge as the strongest emotion there and will keep me going when most other people stop. Enthusiasm. Folks, enthusiasm is the excitement that you have in you about what you're doing. That's what'll get you up again when most people stay down. And don't make any mistake, making money is tough. It's not easy, or everybody'd be doing it. If it was easy to win, everybody'd be winning. And I'm gonna tell you the key to success. The key to making money is get up and go again. Not any failing, they're just quitting before you win. Most people stay down. Well, it's enthusiasm that gets you back up. And these things will make you enthusiastic. Creativity. Everybody's a creative person. It's just that we haven't been able to move the boundaries and the limitations of our thinking. An uncreative person is a person who thinks within the realm of what they've always thought about and what they've always done.
All I know is that as I was doing my analysis, I was listening to the creativity tape amongst the others. And just out of the clear blue, I just started thinking of new things and new ideas that I'd never thought of before. They were ideas that just all of a sudden, after playing this tape for 2 to 3 weeks, I didn't believe it. But I started to notice that I was thinking of new strategies that had never come to me before, and I can only relate it to these things. It was the way I felt inside, and it was the whole general thinking process that was involved that I really attribute to nothing more than the tapes, because nothing else at all was different in my life.
We've got to find a way to have the confidence and the flair and the gall to expand our thinking and start thinking in areas we've never thought of before, because then we can come up with answers to our own problems and we don't have to have somebody else. You can be a creative person if you'll just get your mind programmed to look in areas that you haven't been looking before, because you got the most magnificent computer you've ever heard of in your life. We don't know how it operates. Don't you dare think you're not creative. You just need to release that creativity. Winner's attitude. Let me tell you about this tape quickly. This tape, this program was designed for athletes. It doesn't have anything to do with finances, because they found that the thing that you'll find in every champion athlete is that need to win, not to show, not to finish, not to place, but to be number one. Don't teach your kids how to be good losers. You show me a good loser, I'll show you a loser. Because if you find a way to get comfortable with losing, if you find a way to live with losing, you're going to lose a lot, because it's a lot easier to lose than it is to win. That winner's attitude, you see, that program, even though it was designed for athletes, that thing doesn't mention one word about sports, not one word about athletics. It just talks about the need to win, the need to compete, and the need to be number one. And somebody who's going to have a lot of financial success has got to have that. Stopping procrastination. This particular tape works faster than any of the other tapes. I have heard more stories on the procrastination tape than any of the others. I always start people on the procrastination tape because it's the one that works the fastest. It's the one that makes a believer out of them in a hurry.
Well, if I were to compare the Stop Procrastination tape that I used last year when it was first introduced with the new Stop Procrastination tape that the company is just releasing, I would say there is a difference, a big difference. With the new tape, it is a calm, powerful, driving feeling that you have that you want to get things done. And I'll tell you, I'll play that Stop Procrastination tape, the new one, and I'll play it for an hour or so a day, and it'll carry me for several weeks. I mean, it stays with you. I really think the new technology is far superior.
Effective communication. You know as well as I do that if you're going to do something that involves people, you're going to have to be able to persuade those people to go along with your ideas. You're not going to buy any real estate until you effectively communicate your offer to a seller and convince him you're honest and sincere and the deal's good for him and he understands it. Until you can be persuasive, you're not going to be financially successful. And you can be a persuasive, confident, effective, eloquent speaker, both to groups of people and to one person, if you just have the right programming in your mind, and that's what that particular tape will do for you. Let me tell you about positive thinking. That's the next program. See, if you listen to Norman Vincent Peale, if you listen to Napoleon Hill, all the positive thinking people, Dr. Maxwell Maltz and psycho-cybernetics, they recognize the problem is the room. They recognize you've been programmed with negative, and they tell you that you, solve that problem by having your friends stop talking negatively to you and you stop saying negative things. The problem is, for every one time you think to say something positive, remember, your conscious mind can only think about one thing at a time, and 4 or 5 or maybe even 20 negative thoughts or things come out of your mind or your mouth because your subconscious is negative because of the programming. What you have to do is go back here and solve the problem. Have it speak positively, and then when you're not thinking, it'll be speaking positive things from the subconscious mind, and now the process that was snowballing against you starts in a cleansing action for you, and the positive thinking really starts to work. Otherwise, you're doing it so slowly it can't conceivably make much of a difference, and you can't think all the time positively, and those old negative thoughts take over and say 20 negative things for every one positive thing that you do. Time, organization, and decision making are two that I'll talk about together, because all in the world that tape does is change your priorities, folks. Everybody makes decisions the same way. Time organization, you decide 1,000 times a day what to do, how to spend your time. And if watching TV, and if playing games and doing nothing and relaxing and visiting are high on your priorities, And folks, that's what you're going to do with the majority of your time. What you need to do is change your priorities so that what you need to be doing and what you want to be doing are the same things. And you can do that. You can program your subconscious any way you want to if you have the right tool. Personality dynamics. Let me tell you about that one. People can't make money without having a dynamic personality. You can have a dynamic personality, but folks, you got to find a way to release it. That particular album, I sell for $349, and they're expensive for 2 or 3 reasons. They're the finest tape money can buy because you're going to play these things a bunch over and over and over, more than any other kind of cassette tape you ever use. And the second reason is they have a special recording process that's multi-track and multi-frequency. You can't duplicate these tapes on a regular duplicating machine, and so the process of duplicating them is more expensive. But I'll tell you one thing. It's peanuts. $349 is peanuts to change the things in your mind that can be changed. I sell those things with a 30-day money-back satisfaction guarantee so that you'll have a chance to take them home, play them, and if there's not a noticeable effect in your life, if they don't do big things for you, then you just send them back and I'll send all your money back. Now, that's the product, and folks, I'm going to tell you, it's the most dynamic thing I've ever seen in my life. It's done me more good than anything I've ever worked with.
I've seen the results of these activities. I have seen the testimonials. I know some of the people that have given the testimonials. I've seen the skepticism that my colleagues, my peers, demonstrated when they found out that I was, working in this area, that I was contributing, trying to contribute in this area. I've seen that disappear. When I take a look at that, the obvious help that people are experiencing, the reduction in skepticism, and my own real feelings of the value of this thing. I feel like I'm in the right place and that the future is brighter because of subliminals.
This woman is creating new eating habits and changing her food priorities while she sleeps. This man is teaching his subconscious mind to be more creative and imaginative. These people are reprogramming themselves to lead more successful, productive lives. You too can become a new person effortlessly by simply allowing subliminal reprogramming cassettes to play during your normal daily activities. The subliminal tapes that Mr. Land spoke of are available to you. The 12-cassette Program Yourself for Success series is only $349 plus $5 handling and shipping. You may also order the weight loss or stop smoking programs for $35 each. Have your Visa, MasterCard, or American Express ready and order now by calling this toll-free number, or if you prefer, send your check or money order to this address. If you would like to receive your subliminal programs faster, ask the operator for express shipping. The cost for express shipping is $12. Thousands have already benefited from this unique self-improvement tool. Listen to what some of them have to say.
We listened to these tapes beginning about 1.5 years ago, and this whole year has been extremely different than the rest of our lives. Improved grade average, no hostilities, the improved family relationships, the improved academic performance in school, improved relationships and interaction with other people.
I found myself, the more I listened to especially the Stop Procrastination tape, I was getting so much more accomplished, and I was organized, but I was following the list of to-dos that I'd make for myself, and I wouldn't stop until I finished the list. I find I'm so much more productive in the work that I do. I'm making a lot of progress and getting a lot of things done.
I feel happier, and I'm more positive in everything I do. I don't think as negatively as I used to.
Using the Joe Land Company's original weight loss tape, Bob Nance of Dallas, Texas, lost more than 30 pounds.
The thing that I've noticed that the tape has done for me, I have not had to do a thing. It's been very, very easy. I used to have very big cravings for food. I'd eat 4 times a day. Food is no longer a priority for me.
But look at Bob Nance 10 months later. As a result of the Joe Land Company's new improved subliminal weight loss program, he's lost additional weight. But more importantly, look at the obvious improvement in his self-confidence and self-esteem.
The amazing thing is that the weight has stayed off, has not come back on, and I've not gained any of those bad habits that I had previously had. and it's been permanent. That's the interesting, the great thing about it. I can sum it up in 2 words: it works. That's just it. It works.
These powerful subliminal programs will allow you to rid yourself of negative thoughts, feelings, and limitations, and reprogram yourself for success. Use this unique concept to effortlessly gain a new self-image. Build the self-confidence necessary to become a happier, more successful person. They will increase your enthusiasm, your ability to communicate, and reprogram you in all of the other characteristics necessary to make you as successful as you want to be. All of the Joe Land Company subliminal programs come with a 30-day full satisfaction guarantee. If you're not convinced that dramatic changes are happening in your thoughts, habits, feelings, and even capabilities, then simply return the tapes for a full and complete refund.
And it's so easy. You don't have to read a book. You don't have to sit and concentrate on a tape and listen to a voice of what someone's telling you. All you do is come home, if you're watching TV, if you're reading a book, if you're doing the dishes, if you're exercising. You just turn the tape on, you don't have to pay attention to it, and the tape goes ahead and does what it's supposed to.
To me, they're just an absolutely miracle product. They're very special. They enable people to do things that they've never been able to do before, and they change people's lives. I think that's the best thing I say about them, is they change people's lives for the better.
My parents have been listening to the self-image tape over the summer. Now, my father was one who just poo-pooed the whole thing. He said, "Oh, I don't want to listen to a bunch of ocean waves." But my mother was gung-ho to give it a try. So we gave her the self-image tape. And she had an automatic reverse player, and she played it and played it and played it. And we went to visit them after 2 months of her playing it, and my mother said, "Well, I just don't know if I really can tell any difference from this tape." And I said, "Oh, can't you?" And I said, "Well, we sure have noticed a change in our family." Well, after just a few days visiting and talking, I said, "Mom," I said, "did you really do that? That doesn't sound like you." And we started discovering that there were many ways in which her life was changing.
Subliminal is so easy, because all you do is press play. And I, as a professional, think that it's the biggest behavioral breakthrough in decades. Time will only tell how big it is, but I know of no bigger advance because it works. Because it works.
This is maybe my worst horror story with food, and I'm not proud to tell it to anybody, but I think people need to know these things to appreciate the value and the power, the real power of these tapes. Excuse me. In a period of 2.5 days, I consumed a box of 36 of a major brand of candy bar, not the regular size, these king size things. Now, that was in addition to 3 meals a day and all the other garbage that went into my mouth. That's the kind of problem I had. And I found myself changing. I found myself without effort. I found, as I sat there and let these waves play, I found myself thinking less about food. My appetite was under control and eating less and less and less. Where I would normally go to the refrigerator or go get a candy bar or some potato chips or something, I found my mind just wandering off into other subject areas. I didn't think about food as much, and I noticed this in a couple of days. Now, I know that doesn't happen for everybody, but for me, it happened very, very fast. And the changes that when they first happened were very small and very subtle, and I could have sworn at that point that they had nothing to do with this little cassette tape. But in fact, in retrospect, they had everything to do with it.
One of the things that I've always been afraid to do was speak in front of crowds. And as a result of one tape in particular, the effective communications tape, well, to tell you the truth, I probably would have been sitting here shivering, literally shivering, before I had ever used that tape. And now I find myself wanting and almost needing to speak in front of crowds of people. And I don't care if you had brought a team of ponies in, you'd have never got me in front of a crowd before. Never, no way. You just would never have drugged me in front of a crowd. And Now I'm very, very comfortable in front of a crowd, and I enjoy it.
The greatest number of people who use these tapes, the overwhelming majority of them, receive benefits in the direction that they are seeking.
Remember to order your 12-cassette Program Yourself for Success Subliminal Series. Have your Visa, MasterCard, or American Express ready and call this toll-free number. You may have them sent to you by regular shipping for $5, or we will express ship them to you for $12. The Program Yourself for Success series is only $349 and is fully guaranteed. If not absolutely delighted with the results, simply return them within 30 days and receive a full and complete refund. You may also order the weight loss or stop smoking programs for $35 each. If you prefer, you may send your check or money order to this address.
There's a lot of subliminal tapes in the market, and I think people should be careful to the fact that there is everything from a very poor subliminal to an enriching, positive, excellent subliminal. I believe it's also important to check the kind of affirmational subliminal that's being used. Look at the integrity of the company. Look at the minds behind the people that are producing and the research that's being done. And that's one thing I appreciate about Joe Land Company, is because they are in the process of deepening that research and getting some good clinical hard data that will help us to understand more about these primary concepts of our mind.
They help your self-confidence and your self-image, which every human being needs desperately. And we don't realize that because every one of us are very insecure in one way or another. And this really, really helps that insecurity. It gives you a better self-image. You feel better. When you feel better, you physically are better.
You'll be absolutely amazed at how effective these subliminal reprogramming tapes can be. Once your subconscious programming is changed, you have the confidence, belief level, enthusiasm, and desire to reach for those goals that up until now you've only dared to dream about.
This is the answer. These tapes are the answer to true behavioral changes. The weight loss tape is the answer, is the true and only answer, and I believe this with all my heart, of anything in this world for permanent weight loss. The problem is that 99% of the world and of this country has never even heard of this, and I know that that is Joe Land's mission, to tell this story to the world.